Sometimes life feels heavy, like everything's going wrong. But what if I told you that's actually a sign your test is almost over? Yeah, when Allah's about to lift your hardship, He sends clear hints. Here are 4 signs that your test is reaching its end and the light is closer than you think. My beloved brothers and sisters, remember this. No test from the Almighty lasts forever. Every difficulty you face has already been measured and timed by the one who loves you most. When the night feels darkest, it's often because dawn is just around the corner. Sometimes the Almighty allows you to walk through the storm, not to break you, but to cleanse your heart and prepare you for what's next. So if you are being tested, do not lose hope. Your test is about to end. One of the first signs that your test is nearing its end is inner calm after chaos. You may still be surrounded by challenges, but something within you begins to settle. You stop panicking. You begin to accept that the Almighty knows what He's doing. That peace in your heart is not weakness. It's divine assurance that relief is on its way. The second sign is when doors begin to open in unexpected ways. Maybe a person appears out of nowhere to help you. Maybe an opportunity you never imagined suddenly unfolds. These are not coincidences. They're gentle whispers from above saying, hold on, I haven't forgotten. Could you? The third sign is when you begin to see wisdom in your pain. You look back and realize that what once broke you has now built your strength, deepened your faith, and softened your heart. The tears that once burned your eyes have washed your soul clean. You start thanking the Almighty not just for what He gave you, but for what He took away, because now you understand it was protection, not rejection. And finally, the fourth sign, your prayers change. You still call out, but no longer in despair. You speak to your Lord with peace, knowing that He heard you from the very first tear that fell. Your supplication turns into gratitude. What? You no longer beg for escape. You ask for wisdom, for patience, for closeness. That is the moment the test begins to fade and blessings quietly start to take its place. So my dear ones, if life feels heavy right now, don't give up. You are closer to relief than you think. Keep your heart clean, your tongue grateful, and your trust firm. The one who tested you is the same one who will lift you. Your test is about to end. And when it does, you'll realize it was never meant to destroy you, but to elevate you. Every hardship has an expiry date. And that truth alone can change how you face your trials. When the Almighty decrees a test for you, He also determines its beginning and its end. Nothing in life is permanent except His mercy. The pain you feel, the confusion that surrounds you, the silence that breaks your heart, all of it is temporary. Sometimes we get lost in the middle of our struggles and begin to believe that the darkness will last forever. But if you look closely at nature, you'll find a quiet reminder that everything moves in cycles. The night gives way to dawn, the winter melts into spring, and even the fiercest storms eventually lose their strength. Likewise, no human heart is left in pain forever. The same Lord who allowed the storm will also bring you the calm. When you are being tested, it's easy to assume that the Almighty has forgotten. You may cry for help and hear nothing but silence. You might wonder why others seem to live peacefully. While, sign 1, every hardship has an expiry date. You keep falling. But silence is not absence. Sometimes the Almighty's silence is His way of strengthening your soul. It's during those quiet moments that you learn patience, humility, and sincerity. You begin to understand that faith is not proven by words but by endurance. Anyone can say, I trust. But only a heart that has waited and endured can truly mean it. The hardship becomes your teacher, and with every passing day, your heart is being polished, refined to see what was once invisible to you. There's comfort in knowing that nothing you go through is wasted. Every tear, every sleepless night, every disappointment, all of it has a purpose. You may not see it while you're in the middle of it, but one day you look back and realize that the pain had a time limit. Even when you feel that your test has dragged on for years, remember that the Almighty's measure of time is not the same as yours. What seems endless to you is a moment in His perfect plan. The key is to remain patient and steadfast until that decree comes to an end. The Prophet once said that when the Almighty loves a person, He tests them. Why? Because a test purifies the heart. It strips away arrogance, pride, and dependence on this world. It teaches you who truly matters. Every test you face is designed with precision. It's not random, nor is it unfair. The Almighty knows exactly how much you can handle, and He never burdens a soul beyond its capacity. The fact that you are being tested means that He trusts your strength more than you do. So when your heart begins to feel heavy, remind yourself, this is temporary. The pain has an expiry date, and so does the sadness. There will come a day when you will wake up and realize that the weight you've been carrying is gone, and in its place is peace you never imagined you could feel. Often people lose hope just before relief arrives. That's when the pressure feels unbearable. When you're tired of praying, tired of waiting, tired of pretending to be strong. But that's also the point when your breakthrough is closest. Just as dawn appears right after the darkest part of the night, your relief is often moments away when you feel like giving up. If only you could see how close you are to peace, you would never stop being patient. The Almighty doesn't allow pain to linger for no reason. He is teaching you to rely fully on Him, to find hope not in your circumstances but in His promise. Think of all the moments in your life when you thought you wouldn't make it yet. Here you are reading this, breathing stronger than before. Every one of those past tests had an ending. That alone is proof that the current one will too. Sometimes you can't see the finish line because you're still running the race. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You just have to keep moving step by step, trusting that each moment brings you closer to relief. What makes this truth so beautiful is that it changes how you experience hardship. When you truly believe that every test has an expiry date, you stop panicking, you begin to handle your pain with dignity and calm. You stop asking why me and start saying there must be wisdom in this. That mindset doesn't erase the pain, but it gives you strength to walk through it gracefully. It fills your heart with quiet confidence that the same Lord who brought you into the storm will guide you safely out of it. Patience doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you keep your faith alive, even when it hurts. You cry, you pray, and you wait, but you don't complain against your Creator. You remind yourself that every second of endurance is being written as a reward, and every tear is washing away a sin. You start seeing your test as a bridge to something better, not a wall that blocks your way. And when you hold on to that belief, you begin to feel a strange sense of peace even before the situation changes. That peace is a sign that the test is nearing its end. So if you are struggling right now with loss, illness, fear or uncertainty, hold on. The Almighty is closer than your own heartbeat. Watching your patience, counting every tear and writing down every moment you choose faith over frustration. Your test will not last forever. It may take longer than you hoped, but it will not exceed its appointed time. Relief is written, peace is promised, and when it arrives, you'll understand why it had to take this long. You will thank the Almighty not just for ending your hardship, but for the strength He gave you to endure it. Because the truth is, every hardship has an expiry date, and yours may be closer than you think. Patience brings divine comfort. It is one of the most beautiful signs that your test is nearing its end. When you first enter a trial, your heart is often restless. You ask questions. You search for answers, you cry, and you may even feel anger or confusion. But as time passes and your soul begins to understand that everything comes from the Almighty, something inside you starts to change. The same situation that once filled you with anxiety begins to bring you calm. You still face the same difficulty, but your heart no longer fights it. That quietness you feel within that sense of surrender is not weakness, it is divine. Comfort descending upon you. It's the peace that only patience can bring. Patience is not just waiting, it is waiting well. It is maintaining faith while waiting. Many people wait, but not all wait with grace. True patience means that while your eyes still see the storm, your heart is at rest. Because you trust the one who controls the storm. When you understand that the Almighty never wrongs His servants, you stop asking why me and start saying guide me. That shift in your mindset is a sign that your heart has matured. You are no longer wrestling with destiny, you are walking with it. That's when divine comfort begins to fill your soul. Not because your problem has vanished, but because you've aligned your will with the will of your Lord. It's a strange and beautiful feeling when you reach that stage. You might still have unanswered prayers, but you no longer panic. You no longer look for quick fixes or blame others for your situation. Instead, you find yourself whispering, "It will be okay. My Lord knows best." That sentence carries a sign too. Patience brings divine comfort, power that the world cannot give. It's not blind optimism. It's faith in its purest form. It's the understanding that even if things don't make sense now, they will one day, and that's enough to bring peace. Divine comfort is like a quiet reassurance that enters your heart when everyone else has stopped encouraging you. It is the type of calm that doesn't come from explanations or solutions. It comes from trust. You begin to realize that your strength was never in your control, your plans or your resources. It was always in your connection to the Almighty. The test might still be ongoing, but it no longer owns your peace. You learn to separate your circumstance from your state of heart. That's when you start noticing how light you feel even in difficulty. The beauty of patience is that it transforms your pain into worship. Every time you resist despair, you are worshipping. Every moment you choose to smile despite the tears, you are earning reward. Every time you say Alhamdulillah in hardship, you are being elevated. The Almighty loves the patient because patience is the mark of true faith. It's easy to be grateful when everything is perfect, but to remain thankful when your heart is broken, that's faith in its highest form. And when you reach that level, the Almighty begins to comfort you in ways no human could. Many people think comfort only comes after the trial ends, but that's not true. Real comfort often comes during the trial. When you surrender fully to the Almighty's plan, the burden doesn't necessarily disappear, but you stop feeling crushed by it. You carry it differently with peace, not panic. This is divine comfort. You begin to notice that your heart no longer trembles when things go wrong. You've seen enough of life to know that every loss, every setback carries wisdom. You no longer measure happiness by ease, but by nearness to your Creator. There's something deeply healing about letting go of control. Human beings exhaust themselves trying to manage what was never theirs, to manage the timing of events, the actions of others, the outcomes of prayers. But patience teaches you to release all. That you stop trying to rush the decree. You stop demanding immediate answers. You begin to live in the present moment with trust, knowing that whatever the Almighty has written for you will reach you, and what isn't meant for you will pass you by. That kind of surrender doesn't weaken you. It liberates you. It removes the weight of constant worry and replaces it with serenity. As you grow in patience, you also start to notice how your thoughts and emotions change. You become gentler, more forgiving, less reactive. You stop getting angry at small inconveniences because you've tasted real hardship and survived. You stop envying others because you understand that everyone carries a test you cannot see. This calmness is a gift from the Almighty, a sign that your heart has found balance. You begin to respond to life with wisdom, not emotion. And that's when the clouds start to part, slowly but surely. Another beautiful aspect of divine comfort is that it teaches you empathy. When you've waited, you understand others who wait. When you've struggled, you comfort others in struggle. When you've endured silence, you become a voice of hope for those who feel unheard. The Almighty uses your patience not only to heal you, but to make you a source of healing for others. Sometimes your endurance becomes someone else's inspiration. That too is a form of relief, knowing your pain had purpose beyond yourself. If you ever feel like your patience is running out, remind yourself that comfort is already on the way. The fact that you've endured this long means the Almighty has been with you all along. Patience is not endless suffering. It is the bridge between pain and peace. The closer you get to the end of your test, the lighter your heart begins to feel. You might not notice the exact moment it happens, but one day you look back and realize your heart healed before your situation changed. That is the mark of divine comfort. So keep holding on. Keep being patient even when it's hard. Don't measure your progress by how quickly things improve, but by how calmly you can wait. The Almighty sees you. Every sigh, every tear, every prayer whispered. In the dark, none of it goes unnoticed. And when the time is right, the same Lord who gave you patience will give you peace beyond measure. That quiet strength you feel growing inside you is not accidental. It's a sign that your test is almost over. Patience has led you to divine comfort, and divine comfort is the beginning of your relief. Doors begin to open subtly. That's one of the clearest signs that your test is nearing its end. When the Almighty decides that your season of hardship has served its purpose, He begins to shift things around you in gentle, almost unnoticeable ways. You might not wake up to a miracle overnight, but you'll start to sense movement where there was once stillness. Opportunities that seemed impossible begin to appear. People you never expected to meet cross your path. Paths that were closed suddenly begin to open one by one, almost quietly. It's as though the universe itself starts rearranging in your favor, not because of luck, but because the decree of relief has been written. Sometimes those openings are not grand or dramatic. They are small, almost hidden. You might receive a phone call that changes your outlook. A person offers a kind word that renews your hope. An idea comes to your mind that gives you clarity. These are not coincidences. They are signs. They are divine whispers reminding you that your Lord hasn't forgotten you, that your patience has been seen, and that your prayers have been heard. The Almighty often works in silence. His help doesn't always come with thunder or noise. It comes in the form of subtle mercy, quiet guidance, and perfectly timed opportunities. Many times when people go through long tests, they expect the ending to be sudden and grand. But in reality, the way relief unfolds is almost always gentle. It's like the breaking of dawn. You don't see it happen all at once, but before you know it, light fills the horizon. That's how the Almighty brings ease. After difficulty, He opens doors in ways that don't overwhelm you, but ease you into the next chapter of your life. This is part of His mercy. If He gave you everything at once, you might not be ready to handle it. So He lets the change come softly, gradually, until you realize that the heaviness you once felt. Sign 3, doors begin to open subtly, is gone, and you are standing in the light again. The subtle openings are also a test of gratitude. When you begin to notice small changes, a little more peace, a little less struggle, that's the moment to increase in thanks. Gratitude attracts more blessings. The Almighty says that if you are grateful, He will give you more. Many people miss this step. They keep waiting for the big miracle and fail to thank Him for the small ones along the way. But those small openings are actually the first drops of rain before the downpour. When you start saying Alhamdulillah, for every small step of progress, you invite even greater relief into your life. There are times when the openings come in the form of people. The Almighty might send someone into your life, a friend, a stranger, a mentor, who helps you in a way you never imagined. It could be a word, a prayer, a new opportunity, or even just kindness that gives you the strength to continue. Sometimes a single conversation can lift a burden that you've carried for years. That's not random, it's divine orchestration. The Almighty sends help through people, but it is His mercy that guides them to you. So when you experience this, don't put your trust in the person. Thank the one who sent them. At other times, the openings are internal. You may still be in the same situation, but something inside you shifts. You begin to see things differently. What once felt unbearable now feels manageable. What once made you cry now makes you reflect. This change in perception is also a door opening. The Almighty begins to heal your heart before He changes your circumstances. He teaches you that true relief is not always external. Sometimes it's the calmness that settles within your soul. When that peace comes, it's a sure sign that your test is nearing its completion, because your heart has already begun to heal from within. It's important to recognize these subtle openings because they remind you that your prayers are not in vain. Sometimes you may think that your supplications are unanswered, but in truth they are being answered slowly, piece by piece, in ways you don't yet understand. The Almighty's timing is always perfect. He doesn't rush, but He never delays beyond what is best for you. Every small step of progress, every moment of ease, every unexpected kindness, these are His signs telling you that relief is unfolding, that your season of difficulty is drawing to a close. You might also notice that as the doors start opening, the resistance you once felt begins to fade. Things that were once complicated start becoming easier. The weight on your chest begins to lift. You start feeling a sense of direction, like you finally know where you're heading. This clarity is a divine gift. It's the Almighty's way of guiding you out of confusion and back into purpose. What once felt meaningless now starts to make sense. The pieces begin to fit together and you realize that the entire test was leading you toward this moment of understanding. Sometimes the opening of doors requires you to move. When the Almighty shows you a small path, you must take the first step. Relief often requires effort. You can't just stand in front of an open door and wait. You have to walk through it. That's how you show your faith. The Almighty promises that if you take one step toward Him, He will come running toward you. So when He opens a door, don't hesitate out of fear or doubt. Trust that He wouldn't open it if it weren't meant for you. Step forward with courage, even if you don't know what lies ahead. And finally, remember that the subtle openings are a form of mercy that also protect you. Sometimes the Almighty doesn't open certain doors because He knows they will harm you, and sometimes He opens them slowly because He is preparing you to handle what's on the other side. The timing of your relief is part of your protection. So when you see even the smallest door opening, rejoice. It means the chapter is turning. It means the prayers you whispered in the dark are now bearing fruit. It means your test is almost over, and the one who tested you is now granting you ease. So watch closely, my dear soul. Pay attention to the little blessings, the quiet changes, the light moments of relief. Those are the gentle signs from your Creator, showing you that your hardship is losing its hold, that your patience has been seen, and that the doors to a new chapter of peace are slowly, beautifully opening. You start seeing purpose in the pain. That is one of the most powerful signs that your test is nearing its end. At the beginning of any hardship, pain feels meaningless. It feels heavy, unfair, and confusing. You ask questions that have no immediate answers. You wonder why you had to lose what you love, why you had to face betrayal, illness, loneliness, or disappointment. But as time passes and as your heart matures through patience and reflection, you begin to notice something remarkable. The pain starts to make sense. You realize that it wasn't meant to destroy you, but to reshape you. You begin to see wisdom where you once saw only suffering. The shift in perspective is not accidental. It's a divine sign that healing has begun and that your test is slowly reaching its conclusion. Pain has a way of peeling away illusions. When everything in life is easy, it's easy to think you are in control. You start to believe that success, happiness, and peace come from your own effort or intelligence. But when hardship strikes, it strips you of that illusion and forces you to confront your dependence on the Almighty. You begin to see that all along He was the one holding everything together. Through pain, you are reminded of your limits, but also of His limitless power. The purpose of pain then is not punishment, it's purification. It cleanses your heart of pride, ego, and attachment to things that were never meant to stay. It reminds you that this world is temporary and that true peace lies only in nearness to your Creator. When you start to see purpose in your pain, your prayers change. You no longer cry only for the test to end. You begin to ask for understanding, for strength, for lessons that will stay with you long after the pain is gone. That is a sign of growth. You realize that the hardship was not just something to escape from. It was a classroom where your soul was learning patience, humility and faith. You stop seeing yourself as a victim and start seeing yourself as a student. Every sleepless night, every tear, the moment of weakness becomes part of a deeper story that is molding you into someone wiser, stronger and more compassionate. There comes a point when you look back and realize that the very thing that once broke you actually built you. You see how losing something made room for something better. You see how being rejected led you to redirection. You see how that painful pause was actually preparation. What once felt like a delay now feels like protection. Sign 4. You start seeing purpose in the pain. That clarity doesn't come at the beginning of the test. It comes near the end. It's the Almighty's way of showing you that your suffering was never in vain. Nothing you endured was wasted. Every wound carried wisdom and every struggle had a secret purpose. When you begin to see this, your heart softens. You start to thank the Almighty not only for the blessings but even for the hardships, because you finally understand what they gave you. Seeing purpose in pain is also a sign that your faith has matured in the early stages of faith. People often believe that belief should protect them from all hardship, but true faith is tested and strengthened through hardship. It's only when you've been through the storm that you understand the depth of your own resilience and the greatness of your Lord's mercy. You realize that patience isn't just a word, it's a spiritual muscle that grows only when it's exercised. Without trials, that muscle stays weak. But every time you endure, you grow stronger, calmer, more trusting. The pain that once shook your faith now deepens it. The purpose in your pain might also reveal itself through how it changes your relationships. Hardship has a way of showing you who truly cares. It filters your circle. Some people will walk away when things get tough, and others will appear when you least expect it. That too is divine wisdom. The Almighty removes what doesn't serve your journey and sends what does. Through pain, you learn to value sincerity over popularity, character over charm. You begin to see people and life itself more clearly. This clarity is part of your healing, a gentle sign that your test is transforming you for the better. Pain can also awaken empathy. Once you've suffered, you start to recognize pain in others. You listen differently, you speak more kindly, you comfort more sincerely. You become a source of light because you know what darkness feels like. The Almighty often allows you to go through something so that later you can guide someone else through it. Your scars become your strength. Your story becomes becomes your service. What once hurt you now becomes part of your purpose. That is how pain is transformed into wisdom and mercy. The moment you begin to see all this, your heart relaxes. You stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. You stop asking why me and start saying teach me. You stop feeling that life is against you and begin to see that it's guiding you. This peaceful acceptance is not resignation, it's spiritual maturity. It means your soul has learned to trust the process even without knowing the full picture. It means you've reached the point where your heart finds comfort, not in control but in surrender. When your soul reaches that level, the Almighty often begins to lift the hardship. Why? Because the purpose of the test has been fulfilled. You've learned the lesson. You've grown into the person you were meant to become. The same pain that once humbled you has now elevated you. The tears that once burned your face have washed away your fears. You are no longer the same person who began the test. And that is exactly the point. So when you start to see meaning in your pain, rejoice quietly. It means the healing has started. It means the wound is closing. It means your heart has begun to make peace with destiny. You are no longer stuck in the why, but moving into the what now. And that shift, that gentle, the light of understanding after the long night of confusion is a divine signal that your test is almost over. You've seen the purpose, you've learned the wisdom, and you found your strength. The pain that once felt like a curse has become your greatest teacher, and through it, your soul has drawn closer to the one who never left you. You stop comparing and start trusting. This is one of the most profound signs that your test is nearing its end. In the early stages of hardship, it's common to look around and wonder why others seem to have it easier. You see people smiling, achieving and celebrating while you're struggling just to keep going. You begin to question why your journey seems filled with obstacles while theirs looks so smooth. This comparison quietly drains your peace and weakens your faith. It makes you feel forgotten, as if the Almighty has favored others more than you. But as your heart matures through patience and reflection, something inside begins to shift. You slowly stop comparing your path to anyone else's and start placing your full trust in the one who wrote your story. That shift from comparison to trust is not a small change. It's spiritual growth, and it's a clear sign that the heaviness of your test is beginning to lift. Comparing yourself to others during hardship blinds you to the blessings that are already around you. It makes you focus on what you don't have instead of what you do. You start to see life as a competition rather than a journey uniquely designed for you. But when you start trusting the Almighty's plan, you realize that your path was never meant to look like anyone else's. Every soul is tested differently because every soul has a different strength, purpose and destination. What you see in others is only the surface of their lives. You don't see their hidden struggles, their silent prayers, or their sleepless nights. Everyone has their own test. Yours just happens to look different right now. Understanding this truth brings peace. You stop envying what others have because you begin to appreciate the wisdom in what you've been given. When you stop comparing, your heart feels lighter. You no longer waste energy measuring your progress against someone else's timeline. You stop feeling late or behind because you understand that the Almighty's timing for you is perfect. You start saying, if it hasn't happened yet, it's because my Lord knows it's not the right time. That kind of trust brings a calm that nothing else can provide. It doesn't mean you stop striving for good things. It means you strive without desperation, knowing that whatever is written for you will come, and whatever isn't will never harm you by missing you. This peace is a reflection of faith maturing. It's the soul learning to rest in divine timing. Trusting the Almighty means surrendering your limited understanding for His perfect wisdom. It means believing that there are lessons and blessings hidden in every delay and disappointment. Sometimes what looks like a closed door is actually protection. What feels like rejection is redirection. When you trust Him fully, you stop panicking when things don't go your way. You no longer assume that something has gone wrong just because your plan failed. You begin to believe that maybe it failed, because a better one is unfolding, one that you couldn't yet see. That mindset doesn't come easily. It's something that grows with experience and spiritual reflection. But once it takes root in your heart, you start to walk through life with confidence and peace. No matter how uncertain things look, when you stop comparing and start trusting, your prayers also change. Instead of asking, why don't I have what they have, you begin to say, give me what is best for me. You stop listing your desires in comparison to others and start asking for what will bring you closer to the Almighty. That's when your prayers become more sincere, more peaceful, and bonus. Stop comparing and start trusting. More powerful. You stop rushing the answer because you trust that the one you're praying to will answer at the best possible time. This quiet contentment in your heart is a sign that your test is almost over, because your soul has already found peace in surrender. Comparison feeds insecurity, but trust feeds gratitude. The more you trust, the more grateful you become, not just for what you have, but for what you don't. You start thanking the Almighty for closing certain doors, for removing certain people, for delaying certain dreams. You realize that everything He withholds has a reason, even if you don't understand it yet. This level of awareness brings freedom. You no longer chase validation from people. You no longer measure your worth by achievements or possessions. You begin to understand that true success is not about how much you have, but how much peace you hold inside. When you begin to live like this, comparing becomes impossible, because you've learned to see life through the lens of gratitude and trust. You start noticing beauty in the small things, the quiet mornings, the answered prayers you once overlooked, the moments of calm after chaos you Find yourself content, not because life is perfect, but because you've leared to see perfection in the way the Almighty writes your story. You stop racing against others and start walking steadily toward your own destiny. This shift also affects how you view others. You stop feeling jealous of their success and start genuinely wishing them well. You begin to understand that another person's blessings do not reduce your own. What is written for them cannot take away what is written to you. This realization brings peace to your relationships. You celebrate others without feeling inferior, and you endure your own challenges without bitterness. Your heart becomes soft, content, and free from envy, and that freedom is one of the greatest forms of relief a person can experience. Eventually, you reach a place where your trust is so deep that even when life feels uncertain, you remain calm. You remind yourself, my Lord is with me and He will never wrong me. That sentence becomes your anchor. You might not know how things will unfold, but you no longer fear the unknown because you know who controls it. That is the kind of trust that ends anxiety and invites peace. It is the moment when your test starts losing its hold on you because your heart has already surrendered to divine will. So, if you find yourself comparing your life to others, take a deep breath and remind out yourself that your journey was crafted with care by the one who knows you best. Every delay, every hardship, every twist in your story is perfectly designed to prepare you for something greater. When you stop comparing and start trusting, you shift from restlessness to peace, from doubt to faith, from complaint to gratitude. And that transformation is a sure sign that your test is nearing its end. Because once your heart finds complete trust in the Almighty, the lesson has been learned, the soul has been refined, and the door to relief begins to open. Your prayers feel lighter. This is a sign that your test is nearing its end. In the midst of hardship, prayer often begins as a desperate plea, full of urgency and sometimes even frustration. You raise your hands, pour your heart out, and repeat the same words, hoping that somehow your situation will change overnight. It is a natural response when life seems unbearable. But as you endure the trial and your heart grows, your prayers begin to transform. They become lighter, not because the problem has vanished, but because your soul has learned to trust the one who holds the universe in his hands. That subtle shift in how you pray is one of the clearest indications that your hardship is coming to an end. When a person first faces difficulty, prayer is often filled with panic and anxiety. You may feel like your supplications must be answered immediately, or else something terrible will happen. Every unanswered prayer seems like a sign of neglect, but over time, the Almighty teaches patience through this very process. He allows you to wait, to wrestle with uncertainty, to turn inward and reflect. slowly you begin to notice that prayer is no longer about demanding an answer, but about connecting with the one who sees everything. It is no longer about rushing relief, but about submitting to wisdom far greater than your own. That lightness in prayer is the soul's first sign of relief. Lighter prayers mean that your heart has stopped being overwhelmed by fear. You still care deeply, but the desperation fades. Instead of shouting into the void, you whisper with calmness. You begin to understand that the Almighty has heard you from the very first tear, from the very first sigh. There is no need to keep repeating the same words in panic, because your sincerity has already reached Him. That realization brings a bonus. Your prayers feel lighter, profound sense of peace. Your prayers no longer feel heavy, and neither does your heart. The relief begins before the circumstance changes, because your soul has already been comforted. Prayer also becomes lighter when gratitude begins to replace complaint. During hardship, it is easy to focus only on what is lacking. You may pray constantly for relief while ignoring the small blessings that still surround you. But as your heart matures, you begin to thank the Almighty not only for what you hope to receive, but for what you already have. That simple shift from asking to thanking, from pleading to praising, brings immense peace. You may not notice it immediately, but this change in your attitude is a sign that your test is nearing its end. Gratitude softens the heart and opens the door for more blessings. Another sign of lighter prayer is that it becomes more focused on submission than on control. In the early stages of difficulty, we often pray for specific outcomes as if we know what is best. But as you endure, you start asking for what is right rather than what is convenient. You pray for strength instead of shortcuts, for guidance instead of immediate solutions, for clarity instead of easy escape. This type of prayer demonstrates that your faith has deepened. You have begun to trust the Almighty's wisdom over your own, and that trust naturally lightens the burden of expectation. You pray with hope rather than desperation, and that is a powerful indicator that relief is near. Lighter prayers also mean that you are less attached to the timing of your answer. In the beginning of a trial, you may feel frustrated by delays. Every day feels like an eternity, every moment like a test of patience. But as you persevere, you begin to accept that the Almighty's timing is perfect. You may still wish for relief, but you do so without panic. You pray with calmness, believing that what is meant for you will come at exactly the right moment. That trust in divine timing is a clear sign that your heart is being lifted and your test is approaching its conclusion. Sometimes lighter prayer manifests as a quiet joy in the act itself. You may notice that even if the situation has not changed, you feel a subtle peace while praying. You begin to speak to the Almighty with a sense of closeness rather than desperation. Your words become gentle, your heart softens and you sense His presence as you pray. This comfort is not dependent on outcomes. It is a reflection of the connection you have cultivated through patience and endurance. That connection itself is a sign of relief. It shows that your soul has already started to recover, even if the world around you has not yet shifted. Prayer also becomes lighter when your trust begins to show in your daily actions. You no longer act out of fear or panic. You carry on with life, doing your best while leaving the rest to the Almighty. You find that your heart can carry the difficulty with serenity rather than burden. You no longer demand immediate results or cling to control. You act, but you also surrender. That balance between effort and trust is part of the transformation that occurs just before relief arrives. It is a sign that your heart has learned to coexist with the trial in peace, and the Almighty is preparing to lift the heaviness from your life. Finally, lighter prayer is a reflection of immaturity. It shows that you have endured, reflected, and grown. You have learned to see the trial not as punishment, but as a teacher. You have learned to see hardship not as an obstacle, but as a path to strengthen your soul. And because of that understanding, your prayers flow with calmness, hope, and gratitude. They are lighter because your heart has been elevated above despair. You may still ask for relief, but now it is accompanied by patience, acceptance, and trust. That is one of the clearest signs that the trial is almost over. So when you notice your prayers feeling lighter, rejoice quietly in your heart. It is a subtle, beautiful signal that the Almighty has heard you, that your patience has been rewarded, and that the test is drawing to a close. Your heart has begun to find peace. Your trust has deepened and relief is on the horizon. The prayers that once carried desperation now carry hope, and that hope is the first hint that your trial, conclusion, and final encouragement is about to end. My dear brothers and sisters, every test has a limit, every hardship has an end, and every night, no matter how long, is followed by dawn. If you have been patient, if you have endured in faith, if you have trusted in the one who knows you best, then know this: relief is closer than you think. The signs are already appearing. Peace in your heart, doors opening, lessons revealed, comparisons fading, prayers growing lighter. These are gentle whispers from your Creator, reminding you that your struggle is temporary and your reward is near. Do not lose hope. Do not despair. Keep holding on with patience, gratitude, and trust. Walk through the doors that are opening for you. See the wisdom in your pain and rejoice quietly in the subtle comfort of your prayers. Every tear, every moment of waiting, every hardship you endured was not in vain. It has shaped you, strengthened you, and prepared you for the blessings that are coming. Remember, the one who tested you is the same one who will lift you. Your test is about to end, and when it does, you will emerge stronger, wiser and closer to the Creator than ever before. Hold on, have faith, relief is written, and your heart will soon know it fully.